Direct quote. Of things, some are in our power and others are not. In our power are opinion, movement towards a thing, desire, aversion, or movement away from a thing, and, in a word, whatever are our own acts. Not in our power are the body, property, reputation, offices or positions, and, in a word, whatever is not in our own act. And the things in our power are by nature free, not subject to restraint nor hindrance, but the things not in our power are weak, slavish, subject to restraint, and in the power of others. Remember then that if you think the things which you are by nature slavish to be free, then the things which are in your power of others to be your own, you will be hindered, you will be lament, and you will be disturbed, and you'll blame both gods and men. But if you think that only which is your own to be your own, and if you think that what is another's belongs to another, no man will ever compel you, no man will ever hinder you, and you'll never blame anybody. You won't accuse any man, and you won't do anything involuntarily. Nobody will harm you, you'll have no enemies, because you'll suffer no harm. If then you desire such great things, remember that you must not lay hold of them with a small effort, but you must leave alone some things entirely and postpone others for the present. But if you wish for these things also, and power and wealth, perhaps you will not gain even these things, very things, because you aim also at those former things. So you should focus. Certainly you will fail in those things though, which alone happiness and freedom are secured. Straight away, then practice saying to every harsh appearance, "You're an appearance," and in no matter what you appear to be. Then examine by the rules which you possess, and by this first and chiefly, whether it relates to things which are in our power or to things which are not in our power. And if it relates to anything which is not in our power, be ready to say that it does not concern you. If we look at the modern understanding of what that means, what I can give you from that passage is don't worry about what you can't control, what's not in your act, something that you can't act on. This is because whatever happens still happens, and it's not worth worrying about them. Now let me give you an interpretation of what that means. A key thing that I see here is the control of desire. He says this early on in the passage, but this exemplifies that we have a lot more control than we would like to think on our minds. Think about that. We can control what we want. This reminds me a lot about the idea surrounding human free will and whether we will truly have control over ourselves. It's worth the debate, but I think at the end of the day it serves us and society much better if we collectively believe that humans do have a control over themselves, at the very least control over their desires. A common trend with Epictetus' teachings is that he's very deterministic, in that fate controls much of our life. This again is worth deeply thinking about, but I think the natural law of cause and effect dictates that fate must exist, right? Like, so much of our life is determined by genes and nurture, but I think it's less of a discussion on whether nurture or nature affects you more, and about how little control you actually have had on either of those things. I mean, think about that. You didn't get to choose which family you were born into, nor did you get to choose your genes. Nevertheless, fate can also be worth accepting when it's inevitable, and that means, say death. And you'll see that in the next section here when I talk about historical relevance. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, he was killed by his fear of death, and despite the irony, he literally died trying to find a potion that would grant him some sort of immortality. And when the superstitious emperor heard of a meteor that marked his demise, not only did he kill everyone that was nearby, but he went crazy trying to find a cure for death, which is not possible, and ultimately he died of mercury poisoning, likely which came from a failed potion. His fear of death included him creating many terracotta soldiers, you'll see in this picture, because he thought he would not have an army in the afterlife. It's his fear of death which killed him. And this reminds me of a quote from Seneca, "He who worries before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." And I like to give a life example about that. And personally, I worry a lot. I worry too much. I can't do something the entire day when I have a meeting booked with, say, a doctor or something. and it ruins my day because I'm so worried about missing an appointment or being late to it or messing up or saying something wrong. I do this when interviews too. Quarantine has done little to help that because I read somewhere that it takes more energy to process video calls than in-person interactions because you don't get to see the body language as well. And I've done a lot to reduce my worries, especially with Stoic philosophy, but I know I'm not alone when I say that our society has an epidemic of worry. We worry so goddamn much. And the news constantly fuels the fire of our fear, and it's so easy to burn out. Take for instance the entire AstraZeneca vaccine scandal, right? Where people are so worried about blood clots and stuff, and the risk has been blown out of proportion. And so, I know personally, I justify worrying by saying to myself that I'm trying to find a solution. But honestly, if there was a solution, I would have either found it out by now, or if there isn't, or if there is, worrying doesn't help me get to that solution. And so when I worry, I tend to just repeat stupid things in my mind. So make it a point to stop worrying when you've rationally decided that there's something that's no longer in your control. Leave it to fate, lest you tempt the universe like Qin Shi Huang did. And I think how to implement this is best done with a few things. First thing that I've done other than studying Stoic philosophy is trying mindfulness and meditation. Putting on a peaceful track in the background, sitting in the dark, it actually is... it's really peaceful. It's good for you. And it does wonders for the mind, and honestly, sometimes even my body. I found myself a lot more flexible, random pains go away, and I feel healthier too. And it's worth trying yourself, because it's very easy to find tutorials, and it doesn't hurt to try, right? And something related to this is deep breathing as well. It's definitely a biological thing, but when you have adequate air, you feel safe and healthy, because you have the time to deeply breathe in and take care of yourself. But when you're depriving your body of oxygen, remember when you're hyperventilating or stressing, you feel physically sicker and you worry too much. Breathe a little, Google some breathing exercises, and there's actually a pop-up that comes up, and you'll feel a lot better just going through that little exercise. Talking to others has also been a lifesaver, especially during this pandemic. I know I started the first few months not talking to anybody, and it drove me insane. I physically felt sicker. But I scheduled weekly calls with some friends and family, and I felt better after each and every one of them. Yes, sometimes you'll have arguments or stupid things, but generally speaking, I feel so much better. And if you don't have friends to talk to, or family, there's people on Reddit that will talk to you. And I know some people don't like video calls or phone calls, so casual conversation on Reddit, reddit.com/casual conversation, has been one of the happiest and friendliest communities online, and I remember as a teenager I would love going there and typing out my sorrows. People love to comment and people love helping you out. Remember to be safe though, because again, you're talking to strangers. I know some people also like to keep a journal, and these people tend to be some of the healthier people that I know. This isn't it's not too far from a diary, what we used to keep as kids. But it might be worth trying to consider this, to keep a worry journal, especially if you're someone like me who worries a lot. Writing down anything that comes to your mind, especially maybe in the morning or at night right before you're going to bed, it can kind of clear your mind. It can also help you plan, get all your thoughts onto paper, and sometimes when you have those thoughts on paper, it's easy to look at them rationally and say, oh, this is irrational to think about, or I'm being silly thinking about these things. You can analyze them and dismiss them. Finally, exercise is so important for us. I don't exactly remember where I heard this, but it made sense to me at the time. Animals are usually stressed when their bodies are faced with some sort of threat, and they have to usually exert some type of energy to remove this threat, either fighting or fleeing. And so we tend to just build up our anxieties though as humans, and all our worries, they kind of pile up, which is so unnatural and unhealthy. It's kind of probably explains to me why zoo animals and other animals like pets that we don't let out too often, they feel sick and they die sometimes earlier because everything builds up to them. Go for a run, go for a walk, or honestly, just do a plank for a minute or two. Hell, even go into the garden and start planting. You'll feel so much better, get some fresh air. It's good for you, it's natural. Thank you for listening to my voice, and I hope this has helped you.